How's it going, everybody? My name's Release Radar, and in today's video, we ask ourselves the question, is virtual reality even worth it? Let's get into it. Before we get into the rest of the video, I do want to say that only a small percentage of people who watch my videos are actually subscribed. I would appreciate a sub, it helps with the algorithm, and let's get into the video. So the first thing I want to say, and this is just something I've been thinking about for a while, is that virtual reality is just kind of in this weird limbo state right now, where there's not a lot of people who have VR headsets. And because there's not a lot of people who have VR headsets, developers aren't making AAA games for VR. And because developers aren't making AAA big, huge, fun games for VR, not a lot of people are buying VR headsets. So there's this weird kind of back and forth problem going on with VR. And Valve was the first company to bring the first traditional AAA style game, Half-Life Alyx, to virtual reality. So we only really have one actual traditional AAA story campaign game in VR, and that's just Half-Life Alyx. Now, there are a ton of other indie projects out there that are a ton of fun, some of which I'm going to be talking about and highlighting in this video. If you plan on picking up VR, just know that there's not a lot of big budget AAA titles to play yet. But with that out of the way, let's move into the headsets that I recommend. So I personally play on an HTC Vive. I'll show you guys a video right now on screen of what my VR setup looks like. I run it off of my laptop, which has a 3080 in it. And I basically have my headset hanging from the ceiling. It's an HTC Vive. I got Valve Index controllers, 2 base stations in the corner, and it's a nice setup. But that's a lot of work. And if you don't want to go through all the work of having a gaming PC powerful enough to drive VR and having cables that you were basically tethered to, you could just get an Oculus Quest. Now, unfortunately, the Quest 2 did just go up in price, but I still highly recommend it as an entry point into VR. So the Quest 2, and I got my HTC Vive used, by the way. So Quest 2, used or new, HTC Vive, used because they don't make it anymore, or even the Valve Index. Those are the headsets that I recommend. On the cheap end, it is a used HTC Vive. On the slightly more expensive end, which is completely wireless, it's the Oculus Quest. And on the most expensive end, it is the Valve Index. So those are the 3 headsets that I have the most experience with, and those are the 3 headsets that I honestly would recommend. So a used HTC Vive will set you back around $150 to $200 US, depending on what kind of deal you find on the used market. A Meta Quest, or the Quest 2, will set you back about $400, and that's before tax. And then the Valve Index will set you back about $1,000. And there are multiple other options for headsets out there, but those are the only 3 that I have experience with. And because I like them all, those are the 3 that I'm going to recommend. They're at different price points. You can't really find the HTC New anymore just because the HTC Vive is just, they don't manufacture it anymore. It's been discontinued, but you can find so many, like I did, used options online. I found mine on Facebook Marketplace, and I talked them down from $300 to $250. And so you could do the same thing. And you could also check eBay, you could check Craigslist or whatever else. Just make sure you meet up somewhere public if you're buying on the used market. Don't just invite them into your house, be safe, don't be stupid. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about games. So my favorite game in VR is probably Pavlov. And that's because Pavlov is almost like the Gary's mod of virtual reality. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a little bit with some footage. But Pavlov is a VR first-person shooter, first and foremost. But there's also modding. And you don't really have to do that much work to install the mods. So let's say you're browsing the server browser and you see a server where somebody's playing Call of Duty Zombies in VR. If there's an open slot in that server, all you have to do is join it, and then it'll download that map and that mod for you. And then if you want to play it by yourself, you just create a lobby, private the lobby, and then play that by yourself. And that's something that I have just loved about Pavlov. I have found Star Wars zombies. I have found Call of Duty Zombies in VR. I have found Minecraft Call of Duty Zombies, like this weird hybrid where you're fighting piglings and pigments from Minecraft, like from the Nether, but you're also repairing barricades and buying guns off the wall and hitting the mystery box like Call of Duty Zombies. So Pavlov is just this huge sandbox in virtual reality. There's gun game, team deathmatch, trouble in terrorist town, search and destroy. There's all these traditional game modes. And then there's like a shoot house where you can go through and sweep a little building and hit targets. And it's so much fun. So while Pavlov is the multiplayer shooter sandbox style game that I really recommend, the story-driven first-person shooter that I really recommend, and this is going to be a surprise to nobody, is Half-Life Alyx. I will say that Half-Life Alyx has mod support through the Steam Workshop. I've got several mods to work. You can download a BioShock mod and basically play BioShock in VR through Half-Life Alyx. There's also Contractors, which is basically just a John Wick simulator in VR. And there's probably more mods that I don't even know about. But Half-Life Alyx on its own, without the mods, is why I bought my headset. I've played games like Pavlov and Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades and Beat Saber on my friend Kyle's HTC Vive, but Half-Life Alyx is the game that drove me to buy my headset, and I don't regret it because the game's amazing. I know a lot of people were really mad when they heard that the new Half-Life that was finally coming out after all these years was going to be only in VR, but I'm so thankful that it was because it is something that if you get a VR headset, you are going to miss out if you don't play Half-Life Alyx. So Half-Life Alyx is the second game that I really, really, really recommend. Another game that I really recommend spending time in VR is VR Chat. Now, that game, I'm just going to show some footage real quick.
Look up a Twink.
That game, it's weird. There's a lot of weird people on there, and you're going to see some stuff and hear some stuff you might not want to, but you can block people, it's whatever. But like, at the end of the day, I do recommend spending time in VR Chat because I've actually made some genuine friends through it. And I think it's just a cool place to meet other people who also play in VR, right? It's VR Chat. You can play in desktop mode, but chances are you will meet people like I have who also play in VR, and then you can invite them to play Pavlov with you because you probably don't have 3 other friends with a VR headset and Pavlov installed. But if you hop on VR Chat, you'll find some people to play Pavlov with. You can get a full 4-stat going for Call of Duty Zombies in VR. And it's a cool social space in VR. So I do recommend spending time in VR Chat. The game gets a lot of bad credit, and some of it's deserved. There is some weird things that happen in that game, but you can avoid the weird stuff and you can meet some actually really cool people. So if you get a VR headset, you should check out VR Chat at least once. So the next and last game that I want to talk about is Blade and Sorcery. Now I know there's a bunch of games I didn't touch on, but I don't want this video to be just talking about games. I know about Skyrim VR, Fallout 4 VR, No Man's Sky VR, Vivecraft, Boneworks. I own them all. They're fun, but I'm talking about the games that I spend the most time in, and the last of which is Blade and Sorcery. So if you don't know what Blade and Sorcery is, it is a medieval combat in VR basically. You got swords, maces, axes, daggers, all that stuff. And since it's called Blade and Sorcery, there's also magic. There's electric magic, there's fire magic, and then there's also like gravity magic where you can just throw things and throw them far. And you also have kind of like the force in this game. So let's say you throw a sword or you drop your sword. You don't actually have to bend over and manually pick it up like you do in Pavlov when you drop your gun. You can basically like use the force and swing the sword back into your hand. And you can also use I'm just going to call it the force, to throw things at enemies as well. Blade and Sorcery is it's brutal, but it's a lot of fun. The melee combat is amazing. There's mods on Nexus Mod Manager like Star Wars. There's basically a Star Wars mod where you can use blasters and lightsabers and stuff. I haven't gotten it to work, and it's been very frustrating. I've watched several guides. I'm having problems installing the Star Wars mod for Blade and Sorcery, but Blade and Sorcery, good game, very brutal, very fun. And I'm just going to show you guys some footage right now if you don't know what it is. And there has been footage playing on screen. It's just been in like this tiny box over here. But it's time for some full screen footage of just the absolute carnage that is Blade and Sorcery.
Okay, that was very awkward. Sorry, buddy. This is gonna hurt. I can't grab you. Okay. Whatever.
And those were just a few games that I recommend in VR. There are a decent amount of VR games that exist, but out of the entire selection, there aren't actually that many that are worth your time and money. And that is a problem for people considering adopting VR, because I can think of like maybe 10 games. Gorn, Half-Life Alyx, VR Chat, Boneworks, Fallout 4, Skyrim VR, Green Hell VR, No Man's Sky, Blade and Sorcery, and Pavlov. I can think of 10 games that are worth your time and money in VR. While if you asked me to name 10 games for PC, I could do it like that. So it's tough, right? Because you want to invest in this new platform to experience games, and you want there to actually be good games to play, right? That makes perfect sense. But as I said in the beginning of the video, it's just this weird limbo state where Developers just aren't making AAA games for VR because there's not an install base. And there's not an install base because there's no AAA games for VR. And while that really does suck, I still really recommend virtual reality. I think it's a ton of fun, but there are a couple things that I recommend you do both before and after you buy your headset. Before you buy your headset, you should just go try VR out. VR isn't for everybody. Some people get motion sickness in VR when they otherwise don't get motion sickness at all. So just go put on a headset at a local arcade or something. There's probably a place near you or a friend near you where you can just go try it out. Go try it out before you buy a headset, because you don't want to buy an $1,000 headset, put it on, play for 5 minutes, and then throw up on your floor. Stuff like that has happened before. So just go try it out. Don't pull the trigger unless you know you can handle it. Another thing is something that I recommend once you buy your headset. So once you buy your headset, get it all set up, get it all going. Make sure you have somebody there with you just to make sure you don't break anything. Right? You don't want to break your TV. You don't want to break your controllers. You don't want to punch a hole in the wall. You don't want to hurt anybody or anything. You don't want to step on your pets or whatever, right? You want to be sure you're careful if it's your first time using VR in a new space. Now, I will say the more you play VR in a certain space, the more you'll be familiar of where you are in your room. But the first time you play VR in a new space, just make sure there's somebody there with you. And if it's your first VR headset ever, definitely make sure there's somebody there with you, just watching you, making sure you don't break anything or hurt anything. And the reason I say this is because a couple of years back, I was throwing a house party with my friends. We were still in high school. There was no alcohol involved in this story, but we were hanging out, eating pizza. I used to throw LAN parties all the time. It was a lot of fun, but one of my friends brought his VR headset. And so somebody had the headset on, and while we were all there, nobody was paying attention to him, and he smacked his hand down against a chair, hurting his hand, obviously, and breaking the controller that was in that hand. Now, this friend, he wasn't really a friend. He was just like somebody that somebody there knew or something. I don't even remember why he was there, but he broke that controller and we never heard from him again. So just make sure people are watching you if you're not experienced with VR, because you don't want broken controllers or broken hands or anything. It's just make sure somebody's watching you if it's your first time playing VR. And the second thing that I really recommend you do once you finally get your hands on a VR headset is set it up somewhere where you can easily access it. And what I mean by that is I have friends with VR headsets who just keep them tucked away in their closet. And I did that for a little bit after I bought my headset. I bought it, used it for 2 weeks, and then tucked it away in a closet, and then kind of didn't use it at all for like 3 months. And then I eventually said, hey, I really want to play VR, but it's just a pain in the ass to set everything up and get everything all lined up, get your base stations lined up, set up room scale, and then put on your headset, and then finally be able to jump into a game. It's a lot of work to set it up and tear it down and set it up and tear it down. So what I finally did is mounted everything to the wall, kept the headset mounted to the wall, and kept all of the VR stuff plugged into a computer and ready to go. So whenever I wanted to play, I could just play rather than think to myself, I really want to play, but I have to set everything up. So, and once I did that, my use of my VR headset skyrocketed. So don't just buy it and set it up temporarily and stuff it in a closet. If you have the space or the ability to mount your base stations to the wall and mount your headset to the ceiling with a ceiling hook and have your controllers, just if you have the ability to have everything ready to go, trust me, you will use your headset a lot more and get a lot more value for your money. But with all of that out of the way, if you think you'll actually use it, I think VR is a lot of fun. I tried it. I fell in love. Half-Life Alyx came out. I bought one. And I have just really enjoyed it ever since. And I enjoy it even more because I have it set up in a way where I can just put on the headset and go. The most I ever have to do is charge my controllers if they die, or if my laptop's not in my living room, I just put it in my living room and plug it all in. So I think virtual reality is worth it. And even if you aren't going to buy a headset, I think you should at least experience it once. And there are cool things that happen in VR first-person shooters, for example, that won't ever happen in a shooter on a console or a PC. Like there is user error. I have been shot at in Pavlov, and I've dropped magazines before. And I've chambered a bolt-action rifle, but I didn't put the bolt all the way down. And if you don't put the bolt all the way down, it doesn't fire the gun. So I look at the person in front of me, line up a shot, pull the trigger, but you just hear the click. And then I look at the bolt and I'm like, oh no, it's not down all the way. And by the time I get it down, I'm shot, I'm dead. But it's so much fun. And the people who play games like Pavlov and VR Chat and are active in those communities are really enthusiastic about VR. I hopped into a lobby of Call of Duty Zombies last week and played for like 2 hours straight with people I'd never met before, and I have not spoken to them since. And it's social. It's a lot of fun, and I think it's completely worth the money if you have the time, you have the space, and you'll actually use it and keep it set up. So thank you for watching this video. This has been a little bit of a rant and a ramble, but I'm passionate about VR because I want to see this medium thrive. Because unlike with the Virtual Boy, the technology is here. We can play games in VR, and the more people that buy it, the more games we get that are good. And even though we don't have a lot of games right now, the games that are good are they're great. So I really recommend VR. If you're thinking about it, try it first just to make sure it works for you. And if it does, go for it. But my name's Release Radar. Thank you so much for watching this video. And for my next video, I'm going to be doing nothing but playing games in VR for a week. I mean, I'm going to be doing other things, but my VR headset is going to be my only gaming device for a week. So stay tuned for that. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Vive.